From Los Angeles, the home of film and television, this is Film Music Live, a webcast featuring outstanding composers, orchestrators, filmmakers, and more from the world of music for film, television, and video games, talking about their work and answering your questions. Film Music Live is sponsored by the Film Music Network and Film Music Institute. And now the host of Film Music Live, Daniel Schweiger.
Hi, I'm Daniel Schweiger, and welcome to Film Music Live on Facebook. It's the video cast where I interview today's top composers and you ask the questions. I'm glad to have you here. Beyond his own identity as an iconic jazz musician and trumpeter, Terence Blanchard has forged an equally memorable Oscar-nominated scoring career, often in a historical groove whose brass-filled anthems have given power and pride to Malcolm X, Jim Brown, Harriet Tubman, and the cop who pulled one over on the Klan. He's gone to battle in the Second World War with the Tuskegee Airmen and a squad of black soldiers in St. Anna. Most often, Blanchard is an Oscar-nominated service to director Spike Lee, who now salutes the forgotten black soldiers of the Vietnam War with The Five Bloods. It's a score at once full of patriotic pride and bitter, rousing irony for an aged squad returning for treasure and to give proper rest to their platoon leader and finally find strength for themselves. For HBO's prequel to Perry Mason, it's film noir ghosts that haunt Blanchard's equally impactful scoring that finds TV's most famous public defender in his far more uncertain days as a private investigator, facing a baby-killing case whose city of suspect characters might finish him off before he finds justice. Navigating a morally murky world of early 1930s Los Angeles, Blanchard delivers the jazz specialty of film noir scoring at its best, using orchestra, tragic violin, eerie hip electronic vibes, and above all his trademarked sultry trumpet to paint a musical world where no one is innocent. Now, here to talk about his vibrancy to past battles and mysteries is Terence Blanchard. Welcome to Film Music Live, Terence.
Thank you. How you doing, Daniel?
Oh, it's great to have you here. And I want to give a tip to our listeners that Milan Records has been cool enough to give downloads of The Five Bloods to the first 5 questions. So get them ready for the second half of our show where we'll be going to you. So, Terence, you've gone to World War II before, but this is your first tour of duty in Vietnam with Spike Lee. What to you makes a great war score?
Wow. Well, I think it's a combination of things because war is probably one of the most emotionally draining experiences I would think anybody could ever have. The idea of losing colleagues right in front of you at the same time of the immense bravery one has to exhibit while walking in the face of danger, possibility of losing your life. For me, I think the score has to exhibit all of those highs and lows, the triumphant sound of bravery and heroism against, the loneliness, and the solitude and the misery of being surrounded by death.
You know, Terence, you've always had such a tremendous brass sound, and it reminds me a lot of Aaron Copland. And, there's a lot of irony to your use of brass in The Five Bloods because, and for like a more conventional war film, it would be patriotism, God bless America, but these guys are obviously not happy with America for very good reason. And yet there's a patriotism to the brass in the score, which is a real, again, ironic contrast.
Well, the reason for that is because, at the end of the day, they still were professionals. They still did their jobs. They still put their lives on the line, and they were fighting for rights that they didn't even have themselves, So I looked at them as being true patriotic heroes, fighting for a country that didn't fight as hard for them. And you have to pay, at least I felt like I had to pay homage to that level of commitment of doing your job.
Yeah, very, very true. Now, what does what makes Vietnam different for you than World War II? Obviously, beyond the exotic setting, what is it about the fight? Because obviously, you could say World War II is about good versus evil, and this is a whole other quagmire.
I think I don't know how to really explain it. I guess, and I'm probably going to do a bad job at it. But I think for me, what happens in Vietnam is that our country isn't as naive as it was during the first two world wars. We and I guess because of those wars, we as a country really had an idea of what that sacrifice took, you know, and in the midst of all of that sacrifice, politics plays a role. So for me, when I look at Vietnam, I see that as a moment in time where the country itself was in a bit of turmoil, with people fighting for civil rights, back home while fighting for freedom abroad. Um, and also, we had just a movement of liberation from a lot of different factions in the country in the '60s. We had a spiritual awakening also that was happening in the '60s. So there was a lot of things that were like opening our eyes to the reality of what these situations were, which was a lot different, than what happened in World War II. And frankly, we saw more of it. It was more of it was televised. And I think that played a large role in the washing away the innocence of what we thought war was about.
One thing also that really distinguished the film for me is that usually, Vietnamese people in a lot of these movies they're just kind of victims, and that's about it. But The Five Bloods really makes a point of painting Vietnamese people as fully rounded characters, and in the process, you actually use some Vietnamese wins, and I think again that's a first for you. What was it like exploring that kind of territory?
Well, it was exciting, because I never really got a chance to explore that world. And the thing that was really interesting about it is, man, it's so filled with some different and unique colors. And what I tried to do is just not to bring the entire palette of colors into the film, but just enough where where I could pay respect, because I would never really try to emulate that. That wasn't my intention at all. My intention was to really do as you said Spike did with the characters, because I think one of the lines from the Vietnamese that struck me was, this is our goal, this belongs to Vietnam. And it wasn't about belonging to a group of people, it was about belonging to the country. And it made me just think about their patriotism, what they were fighting for. Um, I didn't necessarily have to agree with it, the struggle between the North and the South, but still, I didn't want to disrespect that culture. I wanted to pay homage to it instead.
No, you certainly did. Um, what's interesting is that the first time you really see the squad in action back in the day, you again, usually when you have a scene like that, there's like suspense, danger, but in a way, a lot of the brass in this almost like sounds like it could be John Barry or a James Bond score, because again, when you see them in the whole fight inside the helicopter, there's like a real confidence to the music. It's okay, these guys are going to take care of business. So it's a very different way of scoring a battle sequence.
That's all Spike, because with Spike, I remember when we were doing Miracle at St. Anna, that the big battle scene there, I scored it like, like a trumpet player would score a scene given the chance. I had a lot of rhythmic things going on. I had a lot of brass playing all over the place. And Spike said, no, 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 no. He wanted to hear the theme. If you watch Spike's films, he almost takes very much like an operatic approach to scoring films. So I knew with that scene, Spike wanted to hear the thematic material. But at the same time, and that's the thing that I think over the course of time we've been able to develop this kind of cinematic style where I still give Spike the theme, but I have to help push along the events in the story. Um, and it's allowed me to develop a different approach, if you will, to this, where it literally took me 5 days to work on that scene. Um, there was so much detail. There was so many different things going on in that scene, and I think it goes on for over 4 minutes. That I felt like the music just couldn't drop the ball, because it was brilliantly shot and together and edited. Um, and it was a motivating thing for me as a composer. But man, I took 3 days just plotting that thing out on the piano before I even thought about orchestrating it. You know, I wanted to make sure that all of the lines worked, everything was moving. I looked at it over and over again. My wife got tired of looking at it. I kept saying, "Come here, listen to this. What do you think?" And then once I got it to the point where I felt like it worked, then I went back and tried to decide, well, who's going to play what sounds are we going to have, how big is it going to get here? And as you noted, it stays pretty big from beginning to end. And that was a bit of a challenge to try to finagle, just frankly, just how to give brass players a little break where they could take a breath.
And you mentioned something about Spike, being very operatic, and that's the thing also about your scoring for him. There seems to sometimes be a thing with composers where they're really afraid to go for it, but your scores really do, and especially in the Five Bloods, it's a very emotional score in a way that maybe someone else wouldn't be.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Daniel, because, earlier used to, I was labeled as a guy that was kind of heavy handed, with these kind of things, but it's literally, you know, Spike, what he wants, and he'll tell me, he said, man, don't be afraid. Go for it here, go for it, and with some of these films like this one, Black Klansman, obviously Malcolm X, he'll call me up before. He said, man, this is going to be big. I'm going to need big sound for this. He gets excited like a little kid. And as soon as he says that, I know exactly what it is that he's looking for. And I think with this film, I'm not sure, I have to check, but I think this was one of our biggest orchestras we've ever had. I think we had like 96 people in the room playing, and we even had to have a separate day with that with just percussion because we even wanted bigger percussion. I think we had like 5 drummers, playing on this particular score.
Wow, very, very cool. Um, Now the thing about what he was like the most emotionally impactful scene of the Five Bloods to score for you that really got to you?
Malcolm, the Martin Luther King assassination, the MLK assassination. That one touched me, and I got emotional watching it, working on it, because I kept thinking about, I had uncles who were over there, and one of them, he just talked about how they shot at anything that moved in the brush, you know, and how people could lose their lives going to the bathroom, And as a little kid, I just couldn't fathom that. And then to live in that type of situation with that type of fear, fighting for a cause, and then to be in the midst of that fight, lose the very person who was fighting for your rights back home, you know, um, because I know that those guys probably felt as long as Martin Luther King was alive, they had a sense of hope and a sense of optimism for the future, and with his assassination, that had to be a huge blow to their spirit. And watching it, you know, was really hard because you understand the pain and anger of those guys, and to see, Chadwick Boseman's character Norm say, he's as angry as anybody else, but we have to follow the teachings of Martin Luther King, and really practice nonviolence was a powerful thing for me, and it spoke to me to their character and the level of dedication they had to their faith.
Now, on the whole other level, this movie is essentially a reboot of The Treasure of Sierra Madre, right down to the great, the great of like, we don't need no stinking badges. What was it like playing
Right.
that whole other level of the score?
Well, it's interesting, because Spike has done that with a few of his films, and that's because he's such a lover of movies, man. He likes to do his due diligence and pay homage in the way that he can. Um, and for me, really, I just follow his lead, because the analogy that I've been using with this film, it's like it's like being on a court, basketball court, with LeBron James and 3 seconds left in the game, and he passes you the ball. You know, it's an intense situation, and you can't be afraid. You can't second guess it. You just have to go with it. And that's what I felt like with this film. You know, um, those beautifully shot scenes out in the brush. The scenes where they find the gold. The scene at the end where Paul is confronted by Norm. They look amazing. You know, and just that in itself sparks a level of pride in me to be working on a project like that. And it also inspires me not to be the guy to drop the ball at the end of the game.
Now, with so many characters, and you essentially have like Delroy Lindo basically wiping the screen with everybody within vicinity. Who was your favorite to play?
Oh man, first of all, I thought they were all great. I know, um, you know, all of them. Clark Peters, Whitlock, Isaiah Whitlock, Chadwick, all of them. I thought they were just amazing, and I thought it was such a very unique group of individuals. I had a friend of mine who was over here the other night, and we were socially distancing, of course. Um, but she brought up the film to me and my wife, and one of the things she was saying was, I know all of those characters, you know, and to me, that's the thing about the film that I love the most. You don't see one type of African American soldier in this film. You know, you see a lot of different viewpoints. Now, granted, I've always loved Delroy, man. He's a friend. He's a good dude. And I've always thought that he was an amazing actor, and he did an incredible job with this film. I mean, down to the small little gestures in his face, and it's one of those things where I said, man, he just left it all on the screen. You know, and I love working on the project because it it it's one of those things I tell my students. If you learn how to listen, it'll tell you what it needs. And with Delroy and Clark, those guys they are so committed to their craft. When working with a great director like Spike Lee, a great editor, cinematographers, you put all of those things together, and you can't help but come up with something that's going to be really good and great. And for me, I just try to rise to that level. I've already set the table.
I mean, The Five Bloods, and it's a movie, and it was going to be, I believe, a theatrical release until this horrible stuff hit. When you look at just the kind of scope and the production quality, that we get from something like this on Netflix, I mean, do you really think essentially, like maybe even for a long while, that Netflix is the new movie theater with
Oh,
movies like The Five Bloods?
oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. You know, the 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 cool thing about the film being released on Netflix is that, you know, we went to the viewer. You know, the viewer didn't have to come to us. We went to the viewer, and it was an amazing experience because I, I had so many people. Man, I had to turn my phone off. The phone kept buzzing to the point where we couldn't watch the movie. You know, but it was beautiful to see how so many people, and especially friends of mine who are not big moviegoers, you know, got a chance to be a part of that initial release. You know, how and everybody feels like they're part of this thing. You know, that's what I loved about the film being released on Netflix. You know, so many more people, I think, got a chance to experience it. You know, now the thing that I wish is that I wish all of those people had huge screens to watch it on. You know, because projected and on a big screen, even here in my house, we watched it on the biggest screen we could, and it was gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. It's just a gorgeous film to look at. Uh, all of those images, you know. So you pair those two things together, and you have a situation that's pretty cool when you think about it. You think about all of the titles that you can experience on Netflix in your home, you know, with high resolution, high definition, great audio. It's an amazing thing. You know, I remember not too long ago, man, that would seem to be impossible. But now it's just amazing the things that we're experiencing.
Now I want to jump from Netflix to HBO and Perry Mason, which I am a raving addict of, and we're going to drag out what the story is with that baby before the show is over. Okay, so just get ready for it.
I know, all
How
right,
now, I'm really when you look back, you know, at your repertoire, I think maybe the closest score of yours that comes to this or would be like the Caveman's Valentine and the People I Know, and just evoking this beautiful, beautiful film noir score that Perry Mason has. How did you become involved with the show, and what great noir scores were you a fan of before even doing this?
well, you know, first of all, I was just a big fan of the show itself. Period. Let me just get that out the way. I mean, I was excited when my name came up, just in connection with Perry Mason, and I sat down with Tim Van Patten, who was the director, and man, we just hit it off, just right away. You know, we had a conversation about just art in general. You know, and our beliefs and how we want to move things forward, by, but at the same time respect where we're coming from. You know, and in that initial conversation, man, I just felt comfortable with Tim. You know, that's the only way I can explain it. You know, and I remember he's very Tim is very much like me, man. You know, he doesn't say much, but all of his work says it all. And the where we're alike is that, you know, I'm not one to I'm not verbose when it comes to like dealing in these situations artistically. I like to give you your room, and you know, and give you room to do your thing, and that's exactly what he did for me. And I remember I was very nervous because I told him, I said, you know, I said the easiest thing to do with this film would probably be to go back and try to write some music that came from the era. But I said, you know, I don't necessarily want to do that. You know, I want to have the sounds and the flavor and the colors from the era, but I want to have a forward-looking approach, you know, to the score. And he was all about it. He said, "Well, let's try it," you know. And I remember being very nervous sending him over some ideas, but he loved them. He loved them immediately, you know. And then we just started to talk about the series itself because I remember telling him as I started working on the episodes, I kept telling him, I said, Tim, I said, man, the score is evolving episode to episode. There's not really a lot of, I mean, there are recurring thematic ideas, obviously, but they all are a little different, you know. And he was saying, no, 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 we should evolve. We should evolve. over the course of time. And then we started having a conversation about the end credits. And I remember saying, I can't remember who came up with it first, but it came up in the conversation about trying to do something different for each episode, you know. And then that became a thing. You know, is I've never worked on a movie or a film where there was so much attention paid to the end credits. As a matter of fact, I remember I did one that went in a little direction that wasn't probably appropriate. I tried to do something that was more like a ballad, and it could have been considered more of a downer. And Tim called me up and he said, he says, "Hey man," he says, "why don't we do something from that one little idea and then you just riff on top of it?" Now, I have never heard a producer tell me that, you know? And I went, okay, cool. And, we've just been moving forward from there. That's just been the type of relationship it's been. It's been a great experience, I look at it and I'm so proud of the show. I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I feel blessed that I've been a part of it.
When we first see Perry Mason, this is definitely not the guy you can even remotely imagine becoming Raymond Burr. He's a sad sack,
Yeah.
he's a loser. He's been chased by a fully nude Fatty Arbuckle. It's not pretty. Uh, so there's something
Yeah.
really magical about the trumpet in the film noir score that just conveys sad sack loser. How do you think that instrument just suited where you see this character start at?
Well, I think in a weird way, man. One of the things that I've always thought about, we associate the trumpet with taps. You know what I mean? There's this kind of association with that sound. Either that or the racetrack. Which is I really hate. But I kept thinking, the trumpet has to be the conscience of this guy. It does come off as being a loser. That's why I've been telling people. I said, man, this is not your parents' Perry Mason. This is a different thing. And these guys have been going for it. To set it up the way they've set it up for him to be coming from this situation where he was down on his luck, wasn't making any money. Trying to keep his farm. The entire thing was just like a shock to my system when I first saw it, and it could add in that. I mean, you look at Chinatown, man, and you hear that melody played on the trumpet. It just sets a tone for the entire film, and I was definitely inspired by that. Working on this particular piece. But then there are other times too where I think the trumpet could add a little more energy to certain scenes. There's one scene in the series, which I think you've seen already. I hope I'm not giving anything away. But when Fatty Arbuckle accosts him in the phone booth, I tried to bring a little more excitement to that scene with the trumpet.
Very, very, very true. And again, let's talk about those end credit sequences. Again, they're absolutely beautiful. And again, especially in the last episode on Sunday, it's almost essentially like the Superman moment of the entire series so far, where he's flying out of the Fortress of Solitude, but in this case, he's taking the oath to become a lawyer. What was the
Yeah.
importance like of putting on the suit, the Perry Mason suit?
Well, see, that was the thing about with Tim. Like when you watch him taking the oath, there's no other piece of music like that in the entire series. You know what I mean? But that moment is such a pivotal moment. The music just had to go there. This is a guy who's making a serious transformation. A guy who's definitely shell shocked and dealing with the aftermath of being at war himself. Um, Trying, like I said earlier, trying to survive, and now he's put in this position where he's the only guy that has been working on the case that's still on it and has all of the information, and the only guy who could possibly save this young woman's life. And he's gotten to the point now where he's taken the oath. For me, that was like an incredible turnaround in the film. I mean, not the film, in the TV show, in the series, and the music had to reflect that. So when it came time for the end credits, it's almost as if the end credits is like that celebration of like, wow, this guy's he's transformed into something new, into something different. I can't wait for you to see what's coming next.
No, I can't wait as well. You know, what's interesting is that I'm sorry, we just had to cut out there. Um,
Yeah.
what's interesting is, you know, that at first you don't think there's going to be much with the black characters in the show, but also in the last episode we really start to see the characters come to the fore, especially with the cop who's gaining a conscience, who has to deal with the whole racist incident on the beach. What was that aspect of the show like to you, especially now that you're really starting to see it?
Well, it's one of the things that I love about the show. I mean, look at Della's character. I mean, there's so many things about this show that I think are forward thinking and so cool to experience. When I look at Paul Drake, and this is a man of conscience. This is a man of moral fiber. And he's still trying to be a professional cop, and he has to come to terms with the reality of the times that he's living in. You know, uh, the scenes with him and Ennis and Holcomb back at the police station early in one of the earlier episodes, to me was very powerful because if this series were to stop there, you would think that Paul Drake was just a guy who was trying to, get along. But what you start to find out and you start to see is that no, this is a guy who was trying to find his moment, and I can't wait till you see what's coming up later on with all of the characters, all of them. I mean, they're all amazing. It's the character development in this series, I think, is brilliant.
Now, I'm a huge fan of Elmer Gantry, and especially the incredible score by Andre Previn, and I just love Gene Simmons playing Sister Amy McPherson, and in a very thinly veiled version of her, and in Perry Mason, not Terence Blanchard, but Perry Mason, we essentially have Amy McPherson come back in the form of Titania. What was it like working on the music for her character and essentially the church music for her?
Yeah, man, it was so much fun because again, while it's church is while it's a church scenario, I was not there to write church music, and they had that covered with all of the source. But literally, I was trying to create an atmosphere, a sound for that atmosphere. That atmosphere of, you know, is this woman a true believer? What's going on here? What's going on with the characters around her? You know, um, and it was there was so much excitement for me to work on those things because literally I would watch the scenes and I would just say to myself, oh, okay, well, let's create this palette of sounds first and let's put this here. And then just taking cues from the actors' performances, those things said, okay, something should happen here, something should happen there. Um, and it literally, it literally was like painting, with this series. I had so much fun with it, man. There's a scene where she's uh, where the folks drop the snakes on her at the beginning of one episode. You know, there's so many. I'm trying not to give things away, but there's so many things with her in this series where I literally had a palette of colors for her, mom, and a palette of colors for Perry.
Well, I'd love to get to some audience questions. We have one from Louis Virtullini. Now, he is a huge fan of a score that I want to see come out, one of my favorite films that you've scored, Sugar Hill. He'd
Oh
love to
wow!
know if there's going to be a release of that, and he'd also like to know if you could work with or perform with any jazz musicians, past or present, who would they be?
Well, that list would be endless, man. I mean, because I've already worked with some of my great heroes in Herbie and Wayne and Art Blakey, Sonny Rollins, Art, Max Roach. I never got a chance to work with Miles, and and I wouldn't want to probably work with Miles more, just share the stage with him, you know, um, because he was my hero. You know, I just loved uh, the evolution of his career. You know, Monk was another one that I would love to have worked with. You know, and it's interesting to use the word work with. For me, it's like sharing the stage with, because when you share the stage with great musicians like that, it's almost like you're getting a music lesson. I remember the first time I played with Dizzy Gillespie. Man, I was 19 years old, playing with Art Blakey, and we were in Italy. We were playing a festival. The stage was outside in the courtyard. I can't remember the town we were in. It was a small town, and we took a break, and they used the church as a dressing room. And in the dressing room, Art Blakey told Dizzy, he said, "Hey, Dizzy, Terrence plays piano." And then Dizzy goes, "Yeah." He said, "Well, look, man, when we go back out for the second half of the show, just you and myself will go out." And I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "You'll play piano for me on a ballad, and I'm going to play piano for you on a ballad." I went, okay. So I think he played My Funny Valentine, man. And Daniel, I always joke with people. I said, "Man, that was the first time you ever heard vibrato on a piano, man, because my hands were shaking so much." Uh, but it was such a great music lesson sharing the stage with him, Clark Terry, Freddie Hubbard, you know, um, Woody Shaw. I mean, that list is a long list, man, past or present.
And Sugar Hill.
Oh, Sugar Hill. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, thank you for that. I had a lot of fun scoring that film for sure. But there's no plans about a release. I have talked to some companies about possibly doing this for a couple of uh, films that I've done in the past. So let's see what happens in the future. But as of right now, then there are none. Sorry.
Well, hopefully one of these days. Please keep your questions coming for Terrence for your Defy Bloods downloads. Now we have one from Tor Harbin, actually one of my favorite Spike Lee movies and one of my favorite scores of yours. He loves The Inside Man. It's his favorite of your scores. And he wants to know, does anything stand out about how the themes and the structure of the score came together?
Oh man, it was hilarious about how that score came together because the way that me and Spike work is, I'll write a number of thematic ideas, and he only wants to hear them on the piano, and that's how I'll send them to him, just on piano, and I'll send him like five or six at a time, and he'll start to say, "Hey, I like this for this, I like that." So with this one particular theme, and it's only heard, I think, like one time in the film, I gave him this theme that I thought should be the love theme for Denzel and his wife, you know, which you hear at the end of the film. And I gave it to him with piano and flute just to kind of soften it up. And Spike goes, "No, man, I hear that as a theme." And I went, "Oh, okay." So literally, man, I had to figure out how to take this, what I thought was going to be sweet and sexy kind of theme, and make it menacing and make it thrilling. You know, uh, that was one of my first huge lessons in orchestration. You know, but it worked out great. And that's the thing about Spike, where I've grown a great deal because he'll challenge me, man, because I'll come up with these ideas and I'll play this and I go, okay, I know he's going to pick this for this, and he doesn't. He never does, and it opens my eyes to, well, wow, I didn't hear it being possibly used for that, but I see what he's talking about. So that's been the greatest thing about working with him, man, is how he's opened my eyes to new possibilities of how melodies can be used.
I mean, when you look at, today the film music scene, you have some really amazing composers like Catherine Bostic, Michael Abels. Um, do you think there's like a renaissance now happening, for Black or Tamir Al-Khali for Shirley? I mean, do you think there's like a renaissance happening now for, composers of color? Just basically getting any kind of subject. It doesn't have to be, necessarily a film about Black people.
No, I know. I hope so. I hope so. I saw, where Chris Bowers has been doing a lot of great things.
Yeah,
That's
Chris, for
been
sure.
exciting. You know, I hope, Daniel. Only time will tell. You know, Marcus Miller and myself used to have this horrible joke, but it spoke to the reality of what was going on in the film business, where we used to say sometimes we could never be in the same room because if they blew it up, there would go 2/3 of the black film composers in LA. You know, and now, yeah, I mean, it was a horrible joke, but now, I'm starting to see other people come in, which is great, and we can't just make it about color. We also have to make it about gender. You know, um, I've taught at Sundance Film Labs a few times, and I've always seen very talented, capable musicians there. Some of them have gone on to have careers. Some of them haven't, and I was surprised by some that haven't because I thought they really had the talent. Now, maybe they just wanted to do something else. I'm not sure. I doubt it. Um, but it makes me realize we really have to give these people a shot. We have to figure out. And I was just talking to. I was on a panel with Mike Knobloch, and he was talking about it. And I said, man, we have to create something. Maybe if you want to think of it like the minor leagues here, where people and could I get it with these huge budgets. People don't want to take a chance on new names. I understand it from a business point of view, but just from a human point of view, people have to be able to find a way in. And I think we have to create that, where we're giving people a shot because man, as a teacher, one of the things that I'm always blown away by is the new ideas that some of my young students will come up with, and how, their thinking will be very different than mine, and the things will work. But how do we get people to see that? How do we get people to understand that there are other approaches out there? That is the question, because I'm always asked at panel discussions, how do I break into the film business? And that's a question I always hate to answer because I don't have an answer. It's a rough thing. So while I'm excited by uh, the appearance of more people of color in the film business, it's a start. But we have to make sure that we maintain this level of inclusion and expand it, constantly expand it. You know, and for me, it's literally just about giving the best person the chance at the job. Because if they're not capable, they're not capable. But that's not the case. There are very capable people out there who deserve a shot.
No, very, very true. The thing that really strikes me about what's happening now with Black Lives Matter and the marches and the protests is that there actually seems to be some real change happening. Where in the past a lot of this would have been met with lip service, but people now really seem actually committed to making a change. I mean, do you think that this is actually going to ripple into, the entertainment industry in general?
I hope so. I mean, it's an interesting time that we're living in because there has been an awakening of a lot of people. I wrote an op-ed about it a few weeks ago. Where it seems as though a lot of well-meaning people in this country have been woken up to the fact that even though they probably theoretically could understand what was going on, emotionally have had no idea the level of this out there. And I think with George Floyd's death occurring on camera, with the look of this guy who seemed to enjoy doing what he was doing, shocked a lot of people. It didn't shock most people of color. We've all known that this has been going on for a long period of time, but I think a lot of other people were shocked into the reality of the level of hate that exists. And it has had a ripple effect. I've seen it here in New Orleans, where there's been questioning of a lot of arts organizations here and their policies and practices. You know, now let's see what happens. In our business. You know, it's an interesting thing to experience, because while a lot of people are waking up to this fact, man, you still got a lot of people out there fighting it. It's it's incredible to see the level of police brutality that's been occurring while we've been fighting police brutality. It's mind-boggling to think that these guys have been getting away with this for so long, that they think that they are being unjustly picked on or pointed out. That is a twisted point of view that really has to turn around. You know, it says to protect and serve on the side of the car. And it doesn't seem as though, or people don't feel as if that pertains to them. There's a large segment of this population that feels that it doesn't pertain to them, and that is a shame. Because we want to pound our chest, talking about this being the greatest country on the planet. Well, in a large, listen, there's a lot of great opportunities here. I'm doing things I probably wouldn't have gotten a chance to do, but we still got a hell of a lot of other things we have to fix, and there's nothing wrong with going after that. That was the whole idea behind this experiment of bringing all of these cultures to this country. It was an experiment. That's why it's called the United States of America. So hopefully this is a moment in time where there'll be a seismic shift in the outlook and from a lot of people, and hopefully we have opened up a lot of hearts and minds to what's actually going on.
Now, here's a question from Richard Cornell. Speaking of female contributors to television and film scoring, how integral has Robin Burgess significantly impacted your individual ideas, colors, and broad sound influence in various films? Well,
Who's that?
Richard Cornell.
Richard Cornell. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, that's pretty funny, because Robin Burgess is my wife, and she's been extremely integral and doing a lot of things for me. She is my partner in crime. One of the things that I've been saying in a lot of interviews, not just about film, but just the music in general, she has been the one that has pushed me when I thought there were situations that I couldn't do. She was the one that would be in my corner saying to me, listen, you can do whatever you put your mind to. You have to try. I remember when Opera Theater St. Louis came to me and wanted me to write an opera for them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Me write an opera? And I was thinking long and hard about it, but it was Robin Burgess who pushed me into thinking that I could do that. And as a result, now I'm going to be the first African American composer to have an opera produced at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And that's all due to her. She is one that has no limits when it comes to what she thinks we can accomplish. The sky is truly the limit. You know, we enter every project with a certain type of excitement about the project, and it I don't know how to explain it, but once we get into those projects and we experience them, we look at them as helping us grow to the next thing, the next project, or the next idea. Gaining this experience of working with all of these great people that we've been blessed to work with, you know, and she's also very knowledgeable about music, you know, music supervisor on any film, you know, easily. I mean, that's how much she loves music. We met because she was working at Columbia Records, you know, and she was doing a great job there. And she's been, you know, my best friend for a long time.
Now, Michelle Sonia McCombs would like to know if you have any mentoring programs.
Well, I'm teaching at UCLA right now. I just started. This is my first year. Um, and what I try to do is mentor through what I'm doing at the school. Um, and I also have had I've had some people that I've taught privately, but I travel so much that that's always a bit of a tough thing to be consistent with. Um, but I'm in touch with some people. I have some music friends around the country. One of them, he hit me up just yesterday, and the only thing he says is, "Hey man, I'm just thinking about you," you know, and just gives me a quick hello. I have another one who's a minister, uh, but he's a trumpet player, man, and he really plays really well. We stay in touch, um, but mainly it's through my teaching that I try to mentor. You know, and what I do with teaching, man, is I just try to open the eyes of young artists and try to give them the confidence to realize they can accomplish anything, you know, and give them the tools to do it. Because that they don't come with a shortage of ideas. That is never the problem, you know. And I'm always excited by that. Um, so if there's anything I would tell you is that you know that's the best way to reach me is through UCLA right now.
Very, very cool. Now, New Orleans is essentially music is life, in the city, and now you've got Corona, going on, which especially, affects, brass, and being able to play brass in sessions and stuff like that. Have you or other musicians kind of been looking into solutions, to kind of get that back as best you can to kind of, because I've heard sessions are starting to go again with string players and stuff like that. But have you kind of in your own head been working out how to make this happen under these situations?
But you know, a lot of us have talked about it. You know, it's frankly it's just hard. I mean, because we're playing wind instruments, there's no way around it. You know, and being in a situation of being in a tight proximity, I mean, it's just a hard thing to do. Now, I live on the bayou here in New Orleans, and what's been happening, there's actually a guy who lives up the street. He's not a musician. He's actually a lawyer, but he loves music, and he's been sitting out on his pool deck with his instrument and maybe a couple other musicians that socially distance, and they've been playing live for people. I've been seeing musicians in New Orleans who will gather on sidewalks or in front of homes, socially distanced, and play for audiences. You know, um, that's the part of my city that I just truly love because, you know, I think this pandemic is making us really realize how social we really are as a human race, how much we need interaction, how much, you know, we need to be around each other and have these experiences, you know, which for me is the reason why I think we need to take all of the science extremely seriously. You know, we need to do the hard things that we need to do right now to get through this. Whether that's wear a mask, staying at home, social distance, keep our social distance, because this is not going to be forever. It's not, but it can be longer than need be. If we don't do the things necessary to get us through this. I, I I think it's imperative for us to keep our eyes on the prize, and understand when you have 140,000 people who have died from this virus, this is nothing to play with. When you have over 3 million people, close to 4 million people who've had the virus, it's nothing. I've lost friends, I've lost mentors, I've lost family members who I consider to be family members. And it's been hard. It's been hard because I think the thing that's rough to witness is the whole idea of, if we were to really take action, we would be further through this by now, you know. But the thing that we have to do is to constantly move forward, because that's crying over spilled milk. And let's do what we need to do to get through this.
No, absolutely, absolutely agree with that. I think a lot of people have been watching a lot of movies they never thought they'd watch, listening to a lot of the music they never thought they'd hear. As we're confined. How has your lockdown artistically been? Have you discovered any new stuff, or what have you been doing?
Daniel, you know what's so funny about you asking that question, man? I finally fixed so many of the nagging things in my studio I've been wanting to fix for the last 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, one of my surround speakers needed to be repaired. I finally got that. One of my synths had a problem with the logic board. I finally got that done. One of my the remote controllers for my Eventide effects box. Man, I find everything is working. Look, knock on wood, everything is working. And creatively, it's allowed me to come in here and just be comfortable. And when ideas come to me, I go, oh, let me grab this, as opposed to, oh, let me grab, oh, it's not working. Damn, I got to use something else. It hasn't been that experience. It's been a joy to come in my studio and work, because I've ironed out a lot of kinks, that I've been meaning to get to. Now the sad part of this is I'm doing it all by myself. Not in a room playing with other musicians. That's the thing that I miss. I miss the guys in my band, the E Collective. I miss playing with those guys. I miss being around them. Because I get inspired by what they do all the time. That part of it is rough, of course. But I have, like I said, I've gotten a lot of things done that I've been waiting to do for a while.
Now, Michelle would like to know if you're going to create music for the BLM movement.
Well, what's interesting about that, I kind of already have. One of the first albums that we did for the E Collective was called Breathless, which was dedicated to Eric Garner and the Black Lives Matter campaign. And we were very serious about that because we had just put the band together. And I remember having discussions about, we just couldn't put together happy music. There were so many young people losing their lives back then, that we felt like we had to make a statement about what was going on. And that album got a lot of attention. So we actually came up with a follow-up album called Live, where we felt like we couldn't let the topic go and we wanted to do more. So with Live, what we did was we actually went to 3 cities. We went to Cleveland, we went to Minneapolis, and we went to Dallas. We went to 3 places where we had serious episodes of gun violence, and young unarmed Black men losing their lives to law enforcement. And we recorded live in those 3 places. But not only did we record, we just didn't want to go there and play a concert and leave. We had civic engagement in all 3 places, where we tried to have civic leaders come by and talk about plans for the future. We try to create a dialogue, that could move further. When we went to Minneapolis, Philando Castile's mother came to the show, and it was an honor to meet her and talk to her. She thanked me for what it was that we were doing, and just like any other mother, thinking of her child, she broke down again, just like it happened yesterday. And that was hard to witness because it made it real. When we were there in Minneapolis, we also went to the school where he taught, and we played for the kids. We had a workshop with the kids, and some of the teachers there, man, they brought it home to us because they kept calling him Phil. They said Phil was a sweet dude, and that just made it personal. So, we've been for a while. And when we were in Cleveland, man, probably one of the most amazing things happened to us in Cleveland where we were playing this music, and this guy after the show came up to me, and I had just put this electric band together. So everybody, I had a lot of fans who were like giving me a hard way to go about doing electronic music versus what I had been doing before. So I thought this was going to be that conversation. Like I missed, because he said, I thought I was coming here to hear your music from Spike Lee's documentary, the Katrina documentary, the music from When the Levees Broke. Tale of God's Will is the name of the album. And I said, uh-oh, here we go. And then he said, because when you started playing, the music just sounded angry. It just sounded angry. And I said, oh, okay. And then he said, then you told us what the music was about. You told us about how the music was about gun violence in the country and how we can't be talking about tweets. We need to be talking about solutions. And he said, then my next thought was, well, if the guy who created the music for A Tale of God's Will is this angry about this topic, I have to rethink my position on gun control. And that was a very powerful moment for me, hearing him say that. And it made me realize how responsible, as how responsible I should be as an artist to take seriously the effect that music can have on people.
Now, Michelle would also like to know what is ahead for you in Spike or ahead for you in general.
Oh man. Well, I just recorded an album with the E Collective and the Turtle Island String Quartet. We did the music of Wayne Shorter along with some original music that we're going to be releasing sometime in the future. Excited about that. I'm going to get back to my opera, Charles, which is based off of Charles Blow's book, When Fire Shut Up in My Bones. I'm going to make some changes to that before it hits the Met in New York. Spike is getting ready to do a documentary. He's doing a documentary about New York from 9/11 to COVID-19, which is going to be interesting. And man, I'm working on a couple of film projects that I don't really want to talk about just yet, but they're amazing, you know. Um, and that's about it right now. I mean, the rest of it is just going to be spending time with my family. I think one of the things about this situation is it's allowed us to grow as a family. We've been together, you know, just sharing, having tough moments and times, talking through the tough moments and times, and growing as a unit. And in a weird way, I feel blessed for that right now. Even though we're in the midst of this thing that has taken so many lives, my wife always used to say with a career, in general, you have to learn how to take the crunchy with the smoothie. And right now, the smoothie part is just like being able to appreciate family.
So, as we reach the end of the show, any final thoughts on Defy Bloods and Perry Mason?
Well, both, I mean, I feel blessed to have worked on both projects, because both projects I think are brilliant works of art. Spike, my relationship with him is just growing by leaps and bounds. We have yet to get to that moment where we're tired of each other. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
guy surprises me Every project, man, every project. And when we did Black Klansman, I was like, "Woo, this is amazing!" And I think we were at the Oscar show, and he was telling me he was leaving to go to Vietnam. I'm like, "Dude, really?" You know. And when he came back with that film, I went, "Wow!" I told everybody, I said, "Man, this guy's done it again." I said, "He's done it again." You know. And then with Perry Mason, establishing this relationship with Tim has meant the world to me because it's a great series. I think it's one of those series that could have legs, you know, because it has great actors, great performances in the entire thing, and it's just smart. The storyline is smart, the dialogue, the writing, it's just brilliant, and I feel blessed to be a part of it.
Well, I am thirsting for justice to be done and to see what it's going to be like with Perry actually a lawyer now this coming
Thank
Sunday.
you.
I am I'm
That's
totally
all you have
sucked
for
into
me.
that show.
That's all you have for me.
Well,
That's good.
well, I have my own theories about what's going to happen with that baby. I suspect a return from whatever, but we're going to see what happens. I don't know anything. Um, Terence, I just want to give you a huge thanks. It's always a pleasure having you. A big thanks to JC and Stefan at Milan Records, to our producer Mark Northam, to our question taker Bobby Johnson, to our publicist Jeff Sanderson, and Robin, who put this whole thing together. Wishing
Yeah.
you great vibes, Terence, and congratulations on your work. And thanks to you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
I'm gonna say thanks, Jeff, too. Thanks, Jeff.